The three most powerful warriors in the Bible. Number 1. Benaiah. There are multiple men in the Bible named Benaiah. However, one of them is particularly noteworthy. This Benaiah is the son of the chief priest Jehoiada. Benaiah is a popular Hebrew name that means the Lord has built. He served as a mighty warrior during the time of King David and King Solomon. The Bible describes Benaiah as a fearless warrior, noted for his heroic exploits. Like Samson and David, he is one of the only men to defeat a lion. Benaiah was from the southern Judean city of Kabzeel. Before David became king, Benaiah was making a name for himself through numerous daring military achievements. Benaiah was famous for his bravery in slaying a lion in a pit during a snowy day, as well as for killing a strong Egyptian man using the man's own spear. Additionally, he held the position of leader among David's bodyguards. 1 Chronicles 11 verses 22 to 24, New American Standard Bible. Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of a warrior of Kabzeel, mighty in deeds, struck and killed the 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. He also went down and struck and killed a lion inside a pit on a snowy day. And he killed an Egyptian, a man of great stature 5 cubits tall. Now in the Egyptian's hand was a spear like a weaver's beam, but he went down to him with a club and snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada did these things, and had a name as well as the 3 mighty men. 2 Samuel 23 verses 8 to 39 and 1 Chronicles 11 verses 10 to 47 list a group of people known as mighty men of David or David's mighty men. They are also referred to as the 30 chiefs and simply the 30. We read of the mighty men of David when David, the man after God's own heart, was on the run and hid in the cave of Adullam. And everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discounted, gathered themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them, and there were with him about 400 men. 1 Samuel 22 verse 2. This was the cave that the mighty men trained. Who'd have believed the next king of Israel would be training his men in a dark cave where no one could see them and no one cared? What an unusual thing for God to do. Despite being referred to as the 30, the group actually consisted of 37 men. This implies that not all members were part of the team for the entire duration. When David fled from King Saul, he placed Benaiah in command of the 30. 1 Chronicles 27 verse 6, Amplified Bible. This is the Benaiah who was the mighty man of the 30 and was in charge of the 30, and Ammizabad his son was over his division. Later, when Joab was made commander-in-chief, Benaiah was appointed to a high place in David's armed forces as commander of the Kerethites and Pelethites, an elite mercenary company in David's bodyguard from Crete and Philistia. Benaiah's loyalty to King David earned him the rank of 3rd Army Commander, with 24,000 men in his division. This troop served as part of the army rotation system established by King David, 1 Chronicles 27 verses 1 to 6. Benaiah remained devoted to David during Absalom's rebellion, and also when Adonijah attempted to take control of David's throne. At least 8 other Benaiahs appear briefly in the Old Testament, but none of these distinguish themselves like David's elite warrior, the Benaiah, who single-handedly executed Moab's top soldiers, jumped into a pit in a snowstorm to wrestle and kill a lion, and outmaneuvered an Egyptian giant, slaying him with his own spear. Number 2. Gideon. Gideon was the 5th judge and renowned as the greatest of Israel. Gideon's biography is set against the backdrop of Israelites being attacked by the Midianites. This was the result of Israel's disobedience to God. Over a period of 7 years, they were constantly invaded by Midianites, Amalekites, and Eastern foreigners who caused damage to their crops and livestock. God's discipline through the foreign nations caused the Israelites to cry out to God for help. When God's people cry out for help, He intervenes graciously to deliver them. His first step is to send the angel of the Lord to Gideon, calling him into service. Judges 6 verses 11 to 12, New American Standard Bible. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak that was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash, the Abiezrite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to save it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, valiant warrior." Gideon came from an ordinary Abiezrite family, and his name meant cutter or cutter of trees. He felt that he was not worthy of serving God. During his conversation with the angel, it becomes apparent to Gideon that he is speaking to the Lord himself. On that very night, Gideon took down the altar to Baal and the Asherah pole that belonged to his father. Judges 6 verses 25 to 26, New American Standard Bible. Now on the same night the Lord said to him, "Take your father's bull and a second bull 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal, which belongs to your father, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on the top of this stronghold in an orderly way, and take a second bull, and offer a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah which you shall cut down." For his bold action, Gideon received the nickname Jerub-Baal, meaning "let Baal contend." Afterwards, a coalition of Israel's foes invaded the territory, and Gideon was empowered by the Spirit of the Lord to sound a trumpet, which called the Abiezrites to his side. Men from the tribes of Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali also rallied around Gideon's cause. God continued to test and strengthen Gideon's faith by reducing the number of troops he had before entering battle. Initially, Gideon had 32,000 troops, but in obedience to God, he reduced them by 22,000. Eventually, God reduced his army even further, leaving Gideon with only 300 men. This was against an enemy that is described as thick as locusts, with camels as countless as the sand on the seashore. God's purpose was to prevent Israel from boasting that their strength had saved them. He rallied his troops, using some unusual tactics. Gideon and his 300 men attacked the Midianite coalition and routed the enemy troops. After the victory, the people of Israel wanted to make Gideon their first king, but he demurred, saying, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." Gideon's victory brought peace that lasted for a generation. Gideon proved himself to be a faithful man, a mighty warrior, a strong leader, and a diplomat, while accomplishing the mission set before him by God. As such, he is included in a fitting testimonial for the great men of faith in Hebrews 11 verses 32 to 34. Hebrews 11 verses 32 to 34, New American Standard Bible. "And what more shall I say? For time will fail me if I tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets who by faith conquered kingdoms, performed acts of righteousness, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, from weakness were made strong, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Although Gideon's faith was sometimes lacking, God worked patiently with him and strengthened his belief so that he could fulfill God's mission. Gideon's devotion to the Lord demanded that he confront his own father and tribe. Despite his fears, he remained obedient to God and tore down his father's idol, choosing to fear God above all else. Gideon took on far greater odds than possible in battle, but he knew where his strength lay. The sovereign God is faithful, and he saw Gideon through the battle to victory. He is a good example of those who obey the command to trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Number 3. David. David's life can teach us valuable lessons, as he was a man after God's own heart. We first hear about David after Saul. As Saul continued to make errors, God sent Samuel to find David, the son of Jesse. David appeared too young to serve in a major role. It is believed that David was anointed as the king of Israel when he was between the ages of 12 and 16. Samuel anointed David with oil, and from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. In perhaps one of the best-known biblical accounts, David slew the giant Goliath. During the war between the Philistines and the Israelites, the Philistines challenged the Israelite army by boasting about their champion, Goliath from Gath. They proposed a duel between Goliath and whoever would fight him, but no one in Israel volunteered to battle the giant. David's older brothers were members of Saul's army. When Goliath had been insulting the Israelites for 40 days, David went to the battlefield to see his brothers and overheard the Philistines' grandiosity. 1 Samuel 17 verse 26, Amplified Bible. Then David spoke to the men who were standing by him. What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes the disgrace of his taunting from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that has taunted and defied the armies of the living God? David's oldest brother became angry and accused David of pride and coming only to watch the battle. But David continued to talk about the issue. Saul soon got word that a young man had been found to fight for Israel, and David was brought before him. At first, Saul had his doubts about David's ability, but David had already experienced the power of God when he defended his flock against a lion and a bear. He had proven his faith in private and was now ready to rely on God in public. Saul was impressed by David's courage and determination, and even offered him his armor. But David declined, as it would only slow him down. Instead, he went into battle with 5 smooth stones, a sling, a staff, and unwavering faith in God. When Goliath saw David, who was probably around 20 at this time, he was incensed that Israel should insult him by sending out what, in his eyes, was a mere child to fight him. David responded to the giant's curses without showing any fear. He had unwavering trust that the Lord would grant him victory. As Goliath moved toward him, David slung the first stone, hitting him in the forehead. The giant fell forward on his face. David then used the Philistine's own sword to kill him and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw this, they fled, with Israel in hot pursuit. 1 Samuel 17 verses 57 to 58, Amplified Bible. When David returned from killing Goliath the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. Saul asked him, "Whose son are you, young man?" And David answered, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." Afterward, he began working for Saul on a permanent basis and no longer took care of his father's sheep. It was at this period that Saul's son Jonathan became one in spirit with David. 1 Samuel 18 verses 1-5, Amplified Bible. When David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was bonded to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. Saul took David that day and did not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan stripped himself of the outer robe that he was wearing and gave it to David with his armor, including his sword, his bow, and his belt. So David went out wherever Saul sent him, and he acted wisely and prospered. And Saul appointed him over the men of war, and it pleased all the people, and also Saul's servants. Jonathan and David develop a strong and enduring friendship. They were kindred spirits who possessed the rare trait of true courage. Jonathan had the right to succeed his father on the throne, but he chose to give his robe to David instead, indicating his willingness to relinquish his claim and see David crowned in his place. Jonathan, despite being the son of the king and having a rightful claim to the throne, chose to support David instead. He recognized and embraced God's plan and went out of his way to protect his friend. Jonathan's actions showcase his humility and selfless love. After the incident with Goliath, David continued to grow in fame. 1 Samuel 18 verses 6-9, Amplified Bible. As they were coming home, when David returned from killing the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, songs of joy, and musical instruments. The women sang as they played and danced, saying, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Then Saul became very angry, for this saying displeased him, and he said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, but to me they have ascribed only thousands. Now what more can he have but the kingdom?" Saul looked at David with suspicion and jealousy from that day forward. David acted wisely and prospered in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. When Saul saw that he was prospering greatly, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he publicly associated with them. 1 Samuel 18 verses 9-16. On 2 occasions, the king attempted to assassinate David, but David managed to evade him each time. Saul then appointed David as the captain of 1,000 soldiers, likely in the hopes that he would perish while battling the Philistines. David had the favor of the Lord, and his accomplishments made him known to all of Israel. Saul's jealousy of David turned murderous. He first tried to have David destroyed by the hand of the Philistines by asking David to become his son-in-law. The king proposed a deal where David would receive his daughter as a reward for his military service. However, David respectfully declined, and the king's daughter was given to someone else instead. This may have been Saul's way of trying to shame David. But Saul's younger daughter, Michal, loved David, and Saul agreed to give her to him, provided he produced a dowry of 100 Philistine foreskins. Saul once again attempted to kill David through the Philistines, but David was not easily eliminated. He returned with a unique and generous dowry and successfully married Michal. David's ongoing success in battle showed that the Lord was on his side, but this only fueled Saul's increasing hatred and fear toward him. After David slew 200 Philistines, which was twice the expected amount, Saul realized that he was no match for him. While on the run, David built a strong army with God's help and was victorious in every battle. He always sought God's guidance and permission before engaging in any warfare, which remained a consistent practice when he became king. Once king, David remained a powerful military commander and soldier. 2 Samuel 23 recounts some of the exploits of David's so-called mighty men. David's obedience resulted in God honoring and rewarding him, leading to success in all of his endeavors. 2 Samuel 8. The Lord helped David wherever he went. However, the wars that David participated in came at a cost. Once David had established himself in his palace and achieved peace with his enemies, he had the desire to construct a temple for the Lord. Initially, Prophet Nathan gave David the freedom to act as he wished. However, God later informed Nathan that David was not the chosen one to build his temple. Instead, God promised to build a house for David. David had made preparations for the temple before he passed away. God had prohibited him from constructing it because of the extensive bloodshed he had caused. However, David's son, Solomon, who was a peaceful man, would be responsible for the temple's construction. David achieved many military victories, but also experienced moments of grave sin, which caused suffering for his family. Nevertheless, David remained faithful to God and trusted in him. Even in his moments of despair, as expressed in the Psalms, David would look up to his Maker and offer praise. His unwavering reliance on God and constant pursuit of a relationship with him is what earned David the title of a man after God's own heart. God promised David a descendant to rule on the throne forever. That everlasting King is Jesus, the Messiah and Son of David.